Karl-Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby come up with some late game heroics, and the New York Knicks win 113 to 108 in Toronto. We're talking about all that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And in case you haven't heard already, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. And I want to thank you guys for making us part of your daily routine, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you doing so, and hopefully hitting the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. That is, of course, after you subscribe, because we are here for you guys 5 days a week. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at strick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And today, your favorite team had a pretty good win, 113 to 108 over Toronto. Still a little bit maybe to be wary of from the defensive standpoint, but 108 points, today's NBA. I mean, that's about what you can expect most teams to score any given night. So I think the Knicks did just well enough there and did just enough scoring to bring this one home, Gavin. But I thought that the best sequence was right at the end. Just an awesome sequence where RJ Barrett, who props to him. I mean, he's having a really good year and has been a little up and down, but mostly up, and really had a fantastic game in this one. Clearly wanted to torch the Knicks in this game against the guy that they traded him for. But OG kind of had the last laugh in this one, even if he didn't score more points or whatever. RJ kind of got by him, and OG was trailing behind him on a drive towards the hoop. Had RJ made a shot there, he could have tied the game. And then Cat slides with him perfectly on defense, just gets his hands up, blocks the, just blocks the hoop perfectly, just gets vertical. And in that time, OG sneaks back up, gets a nice block, and starts a transition effort. Then Cat gets the ball, nails an absolute dagger of a three down the other end, and the Knicks end up winning by 5. Cat, in one of the cooler moments of the season, pulls out the jersey, does the, showing off the New York. Someone in the crowd must have been heckling him or something, because he was clearly pointing to it and being like, hey, New York beat you today, whatever. And then the Knicks go on to win. I thought that was kind of the moment of the game, but just an all in all kind of up and down effort. Jalen Brunson injury scare, what would a game be without it?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll leave you on where to start, but that last sequence really stood out to me.
Yeah, the Brunson thing is the craziest thing in the world. There's going to be, knock on every piece of wood in your house. There'll probably be a time where he gets hurt and misses 12 games with a turned ankle. But now, he's like animatronic. He just or Terminator is probably the analogy I'm going for. Just puts it back in and is like, all right, I'm good. And 10 minutes later, he's back out there. It's true every single time. But yeah, I'll save it probably for the second or third segment. I thought there were real issues with their transition defense. This is pretty typical of them this year. And in general, under Tom Thibodeau, really aggressively helping on drives and giving up a lot of corner threes. And that kind of kept Toronto in it. RJ was amazing. But just a clutch finish across the board and a gutty win. When we were seeing earlier this year, the Knicks just over and over again, whether it was the Hawks game or the Bulls game, found a way to lose these ones. They found a way to win tonight. And that's over the course of a regular season, the Celtics, a few weeks ago, the Raptors were even more beat up, and that game went to overtime. You could be the best team in the league, and you're going to have nights like this. Toronto's been decent at home. The other thing working against the Knicks in this one is that Karl-Anthony Towns, I saw Benji Ritholtz tweet out the stat, and I remembered it from earlier in the year because it was in regards to the Timberwolves. Minnesota's not won there since 2004, which means this was the first time that Towns has ever won in this building. So he had a lot of bad karma, bad juju to overcome. And I just thought for the 3 guys we thought would be the Knicks' big three coming into the season, Mikal Bridges, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, like for all of them to have their moments, like Jalen Brunson having the 4-point play down the stretch, Mikal Bridges, the recipient on that swing three where Jalen, like 2 times down the stretch, just managed the late trap perfectly. And that's been a theme going back to the Kings game last year, but especially this season, it feels like every single time he makes the right decision when he has 2 on him. Hit Towns whipped it into the corner. Bridges hit the 3. That was the shot that put the Knicks up. I think it was 106-105 before Toronto got a free throw. And then RJ Barrett got that transition layup to put them ahead before you got a Towns layup to tie it again when Brunson was doubled. And Jalen, like, great job just speeding away from the double on the run, lefty pass across his momentum, hit Towns perfectly on the roll for a little layup. Like those two were locked in all night long. And then to your point, the Towns 3 late and the Towns defense late, like just like OG was obviously like the spectacular part of that play, but it doesn't happen if RJ, who all game long and all season long, people have just been flying off him. He looks more like his former teammate Zion than he does RJ Barrett, with just how insanely strong he's gotten at this point. And Towns just like ate the shoulder bump. Like he didn't move an inch. And then it was like Captain America holding Thanos' fist for a second. And then OG comes in, blocks the crap out of it. Just a great finish. I'll let you pick it up from there, whether you want to go deeper on Brunson, who had 20, 11, and 4, or Mikal, who, like, I thought this was one of the first times all season the Knicks were having a bad game, and he helped lift them to a win. So many times this year, when he's played well, it's when everyone else was playing well. Tonight, like, they really needed him, and he actually stepped up. And I think that is just a huge development for this team.
Yeah, I think that deserves a shout out first. Like, I mean, the fact that the 3 that you mentioned, that like swing 3. Also, there was a big one where I believe it was the one where Deuce got the offensive rebound and then kicked it over to Mikal, and he just hit it like right in rhythm. I mean, I feel like this was finally one of those games where the production matched what we expect. Like every other time, I feel like it's just been like, it feels like he's just scraping by, and like giving you like just enough where it's like, okay, I can see the silver lining. We're not quite there yet, but like I can see the outline of the player that we want this dude to be. And in this game, at least on offense, I think that it was exactly who you think Mikal should be. He was just the 3-point shot was going in consistently. I thought that he was shooting with confidence. Just something about it looked more fluid. He looked like he was thinking about it less, to go to a classic Clydeism, but like, Clyde always says, like if like you could just sort of tell when a player is thinking about a shot too much and not just shooting it. And that does seem to be the case for Bridges most of the time. They did run the graphic. I don't know if I should be surprised to see that he's leading the NBA in corner threes this year. It doesn't feel that way, certainly. I was more surprised to see OG as far down the list as he was, but he's been making a lot of above the break threes. So I guess that kind of tracks as well, that his shot profile has been a little more robust than Mikal's has been. But, it's a little surprising to see that he's leading in that category, because it's just felt, I don't say this to like crap on the guy, but it's just kind of felt like every time he gets the ball and you're like, they need this shot, he misses it. And, that's just kind of been the MO this year so far. And this game, I feel like finally shook that a bit, where they needed some shots. Like they had to claw back a little bit in the second half in this one. Like they were just consistently down like 3-4 points. The Raptors were responding well as the Knicks were trying to go on runs, and, then Mikal would get it and he would make a shot and the Knicks would be right back in it and they would be tied or whatever. And then, eventually we saw how things went down the stretch, and, Cat made the ultimate big one down at the very end. But I thought that they wouldn't have gotten nearly that far without Mikal playing as well as he did. So definitely, I would say arguably his best offensive game of the year so far, just in terms of the stakes of it all. And to your point, the fact that he sort of set the example rather than following the example, I think was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, he was. I think you nailed it. Like the shot. This is how I kind of expected Mikal Bridges to shoot when the Knicks got him, and I still want to see him get more time on the ball. Like especially when Jalen's off the court, because we know he has that in him. Like we know he can create, especially against second units, especially against lesser defenses. So I still want more of that. But this was like a very you could say either poor man's Kevin Durant or just, if you want a more direct example, Suns like Mikal Bridges kind of game, where he was just super efficient with very limited touches. Like he didn't really have time to cook. He didn't really have time to get in a rhythm. And instead he's getting 2 back cuts for layups early, like another one in the second half, like corner tray right before halftime to put the Knicks back up. Had back-to-back like brilliant non-scoring plays where he won a jump ball and like tipped it way up the court to Jalen, who ran it down for a layup. And then next play literally did essentially the exact same thing, got a rebound in traffic, caught it. And it reminded me of quickly to Obi back in the day, just launched the ball down the court. Again, Jalen's down there somewhere. He gets it. He gets a layup. Had like another like catch and shoot 3. I think you mentioned the wing one, but like his second to last one was like in the corner on the run, quick trigger. And like, I was just pumped up because when the Knicks traded for Mikal Bridges and we were so excited right before the draft, like this was pretty much everything I was expecting. So it was a really fun game. I want to talk a little bit more about Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns because I thought they're both spectacular, and I don't want to let the night go by, even though we expect those guys to be great. I thought they're both really amazing, and we touched on the end of the game, but I want to talk about how both of them allowed the Knicks to be in it at the end of the game. We'll get into that next on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we got to let you know about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Let's say you want to place your first $5 bet. Well, there's a NBA Cup game between the Knicks and the Hawks coming up on Wednesday. The Knicks currently are favored by 7 points, so Knicks -7 to win that game. Also, I don't know. So first off, I think the Knicks will win, but also the over/under is set at 236.5, so that's like a little over 118 apiece. I would probably go under on that. I feel like the Knicks and the Hawks typically, even though they're both, especially this year, teams with a penchant for offense, I feel like whenever these two teams meet, it's often very physical, and they're trying to get into each other's space. It has more of a playoff feel. I feel like 118 to 118, probably not as much in the cards. Maybe one team gets to 118 that ends up winning the game, but I don't think both of them do. So that would be my guess. Anyway, if you want to give it a shot, again, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back in to keep talking through this nice clutch Knicks win, 113 to 108 in Toronto. I think I saw this was Cat's first time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. Yeah, first win ever in Toronto.
Ever in Toronto. Crazy. Yeah, crazy stat there. Although, granted, I guess in the Western Conference, he was only there once a year. So, but you would still.
And they won in Tampa when Toronto could not play in Toronto. So that's something.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, that was a home game technically for them, I guess.
Yeah.
At any rate, we'll still delay talking about, you know what? No, let's talk about, I was going to talk about Brunson's passing because I thought it was really good, but let's just talk about Cat's overall game.
Yeah.
I thought that he had a really phenomenal one. And, I think that he played arguably one of his most complete games of the season so far too. I guess a common theme in this game, despite only sneaking out with a pretty tight win. I thought a lot of the guys on the Knicks had really solid games in this one. Cat with 24 points, 15 boards, 6 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, positively Anunoby like in that regard. 7 of 13 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. He was 8 of 8 at one point, and then had an 0 for 2 down the stretch of the game there. But I thought that he just played. I mean, first off, the grit that he continues to show, like night in and night out, is crazy. I mean, the beating that he's taking is insane. I mean, at one point, I don't know if an initial prognosis has come out on Scotty Barnes at all, but there's like kind of a nasty play where the two of them got tangled up and Barnes had to leave the game, and it didn't look fantastic. He sort of was having the reaction like he thought there was a serious something done to his ankle, which would not be great. Hopefully it wasn't like an Achilles situation or something. But he had that sort of look of disbelief on his face. Maybe not so great, but Cat went down pretty hard at that point, went down hard on another occasion. At one point was driving and I think just stepped on Davion Mitchell's foot and like sort of twisted his ankle on his way into the hoop to go in for a layup. And, just all in all, just a rough and tumble game for him. We talk about the Brunson injury scare, but Cat had plenty in this game too, unfortunately. But through it all, I mean, just kept driving inside, kept seeking contact, really did a good job. I think Jakob Poeltl is a really underrated center defender in the league. Like, I think that he is always, especially against the Knicks for whatever reason, he's always a really tough matchup. And I thought that Cat did a really great job of neutralizing the things that Poeltl can be good at, even right down to just the now, I think, sort of trademark Cat passes where he just holds the ball out as far as humanly possible away from whoever's defending him and plays a little game of keep away. And then just has worked on like just a crazy amount of touch with very little movement to his arm. Like, yeah, he threw the one in this game right behind his head to a cutting Bridges at one point, which was really nice. And then just is starting to do these little flick passes all the time where he just kind of flicks his wrist and somehow puts like a crazy amount of English on the ball to get it to whoever it needs to go to. So the passing really stood out to me. The scoring was great. I just thought that he did a little bit of everything. And more than anything, I just think this guy is really showing game in and game out. I know that some of his reputation, and I mean, I have a cousin who's a Timberwolves fan that, like, when this trade went down, even texted me, he was like, thank God he's off my team. That guy's so soft, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know he's kind of had this reputation of being soft or whatever, but I've seen none of that this year. All I keep seeing is just this guy gets the crap beat out of him every game, gets back up off the ground, shakes it off like in real time, waves off substitutions, stays in games, keeps playing, and continues to just dominate. I'm loving every bit of the Cat experience so far this year. This game was no different for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say this side of OG Anunoby, he was their best defender in this game, and maybe even including OG, he was their most consistent defender. And again, like, part of that is he has a lot of help, and like there's a lot of crashing down and like helping him on drives. And there's a chance if the Knicks played a different style of defense and were more focused on preventing threes, then he would look worse. But given that context, like, he's been amazing, like, all year long. His hands have just been great. Like, maybe not always in drop in terms of like contesting high passes, but on like low bounce passes and just bigs holding the ball, the number of strips and pokeaways he gets are astonishing. I'm kind of shocked he was only credited with 2 steals. Maybe that was just some like road like statistician not giving him full credit, or there could have been plays where like he poked the ball away, like one time from Poeltl, and Hart came up with the ball, but he had 4 different knockaways that led to steals that I counted. But it's possible I missed some. And like my favorite one was like late in the game, even before like the one where like he ate RJ and OG got the block. There's another play where he slid his feet with RJ. RJ tried to sling it to the opposite corner. Cat got the hands high, blocked the ball away. And the work that Tibbs has done again to like get him closer to the level, which the Knicks were really like, I think, doing a good blend of like playing him up a little bit, but kind of like halfway, like still in a drop, but like a little bit more aggressive than he'd normally be. Like it was sort of a good balance. Like it's really engaged him, and he hasn't been like a weak point for them defensively. And that's not even counting the rebounding, which is a huge part of defense. And it's why if you look at like his like B-ball index numbers, they have him as an F as a rim protector, but I'm pretty sure they had him as like a B or like B- as a defender overall, because he's been the best rebounder in basketball this year, at least statistically. And he had another 15 in this one, had one on the offensive end that led to a putback. That pass you mentioned to Bridges, I think, is like a top 5 pass he threw all season. Just ridiculous. Like forced a Grady Dick miss with like really high Grady Dick miss. Wow, that's a fun holiday. With great verticality. He was great on D. The shot making late, like 2 big drives, like one that was like sort of dicey where he stepped on Olynyk's foot, but like got to the free throw line, had another one to make a layup like early in the 4th quarter with Brunson on the bench. They really needed that. Just a totally complete game. But do you want to talk about Jalen Brunson? Because I'm right there with you. This was like another game that I thought like just confirmed what a major leap he made as a passer. Had 11 assists, should have had 13, like 2 blown layups in the 4th quarter from Hart and Deuce. And the 3-point shooting, again, like he's just been cooking 4 for 8. I don't know what you want to focus on, but really impressive night from him. Again, also playing through an injury.
Yeah, I think it was mostly just the controlling the pace and the passing. I thought was just pretty great right from the rip with him. I think it was one of those games where you could tell that he was making a concerted effort to keep everybody involved and make sure not to prioritize his own shot and whatever. And obviously he had to sit for think it was 8 minutes in a row with the injury. And I mean, I'll just shout that one out first. That looked nasty. I guess he stepped on a fan or
He did. He
something.
did. They showed it on like a replay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like weird because they showed sort of like the bird's eye, like from the other baseline view, and it was a little hard to see exactly what happened. But all of a sudden, he's just like down on his hands and knees, and then put a towel over his head and was sitting on the bench and looked real distraught about it. And I was like, man, what the heck just happened to Jalen Brunson on the sideline, like off camera? Um, and yet, just goes back to the locker room, gets taped up, comes back out. It's like same old story for the millionth time, and came out and just straight floor generaled it down the stretch again. I mean, I think that his passing, he had a few that were just kind of, fine passes, swinging along the perimeter to a guy for three, and yet some that kind of make your eyeballs pop out of your head again, where you're just like, I don't want to say like, where has this been his whole career or whatever, but like, it's just not something that I knew that he prioritized in his game. Like he's such a good scorer and, did so well with just, kicking out of doubles occasionally to get his 5 or so assists per game that it's a little like jarring in a good way to see him all of a sudden like prioritizing being such a elite pick and roll ball handler. And, the chemistry that he has with like anyone that sets a pick on this team is just crazy. Like, doesn't matter if it's Cat, doesn't matter if it's Hart, doesn't matter if it's Precious. Like, had a really good one with Precious in this game where he's kind of on the left side, like right by the break for 3, and like Precious set a nice screen for him, and like Brunson just kind of controlled the pace driving in, and then hit this perfect little hook bounce pass into the lane, like right in the breadbasket for Precious, and he got like a super easy, powerful dunk there. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff like that where it's just, you look at it and you go, wow, this isn't really who you ever were before, but I'm not complaining. Like, I think there's a very real chance that by the time this season is over with, he's flirting with like 8.9, 9.1, 9.2 assists a game, something like that, which is, probably going to land him in the top like 4 or 5 in the NBA. And I won't be surprised if that ends up happening and he still manages to pour in like 24 points a night or whatever. But I think it's great. I think that this creates a more sustainable version of what this team could be in the playoffs or whatever. If teams then throw the kitchen sink at Brunson, if he's more, equipped to run those pick and rolls early in the shot clock, like find his teammates on those roles like that, just in general, kind of have this sense of where everybody is on the court at all times. There's essentially nothing that any team will be able to do to stop this offense at that point once it hits playoff time. So very encouraging stuff, and just another fantastic passing outing for Brunson.
Yeah, I have some final thoughts on JB. Some thoughts on the defense. We'll shout out OG Anunoby and his homecoming. And maybe we'll talk for a few seconds about what's next with Atlanta coming up on Wednesday. All that and more here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our newest friends here at Locked On Knicks over at Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. I recently had a bad experience with a big provider going overseas to Greece. I was very conscientious to turn my internet off, turn my cellular off, and make sure I was not billed. Only use it in emergencies. I come back, I have an $80 bill just using my phone a couple of times to look up directions. So that was tough. And now you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So to get this new customer offer, your new 3-month premium wireless for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 GB on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, you wax poetic on Jalen Brunson. I wanted to turn because I love the game. The pass you talked about to Precious was a thing of beauty, and that is why I'm most excited about having Precious back, maybe other than those like all switchable, all defense lineups, just like him having an aggressive dive big. And Cat can kind of do that, but Cat is almost always more so slow rolling to the rim. Like Precious just like bullets downhill. And that's something I've said this a bunch of times, but Jalen, outside of Precious on the Knicks, has not gotten to play with very much. But even outside of that, like you mentioned, the pick and roll craft, like early on in this one, like draws 2 on the pick and roll, the big sticks with Cat. And instead of getting flustered, he just like hits hard, cutting off a double with like a nice jump hook pass. He had another one where he just totally fooled Toronto. Mikal was cutting, and Mikal, I mentioned early in the first quarter, like 2 different cuts for layups. So Toronto was very on top of that. Like everyone was staring down at him, and he stares down Mikal and like kind of confirms that's where I'm going. And then just no look, zips it to Josh Hart into the rim. Easy layup for Hart. One of my favorite passes he's thrown all year. And then the other thing I really loved in this game was the 3-point shooting. Got 2 different ones that were catch and shoot relocations, one off of a Deuce drive, one where he lost the ball and Deuce got it back, and then he just backpedaled straight to the 3-point line. Like early in the year, we had that stat. I think it was 8 games in. He'd only gotten 1 catch and shoot 3, and that was kind of concerning for me. I think his teammates have done a better job finding him. He's also just done a better job seeking them out. And like with another great 3-point shooting night, I just wanted to go to his season stats, and I just want to take a second and appreciate just how improved this guy is. Remember when he was coming over, we were like, all right, he was spoon-fed in Dallas, and yet he was a good 3-point shooter, but it was always on low volume, right? 35%, 40%, and then 37%, never taking more than 3.2 per game. Now for 2 years, he's taking double that. This year, shooting 43% from 3, going to go up even higher after tonight. Like he's just single-handedly turned himself into an elite 3-point shooter. And more often than not, when you have someone who goes from playing with Luka Doncic to being the primary option, their numbers might go up, but you'll see, oh, okay, he's actually more like a 32, 33% guy on high volume. And instead, he's gotten more efficient, creating most of his own shots on high volume, not hesitating on like super deep threes, had the 4-point play late that helped save the Knicks. Like he is just a godsend to this team. And I'm glad we get to appreciate him every night.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how I could possibly top that. So instead I'll go and just talk about OG Anunoby a little bit, give him a little more shine here, other than the final block, which was obviously the most climactic. I just enjoyed, I think the main thing that I'm enjoying out of this crazy stock streak of his is the fact that so many of these are coming on the perimeter and look positively Mitchell Robinson like.
Yeah.
I thought the one that most impressed me in this game was he before Barnes went down, you know, he was doing a lot of the one-on-one defending of Barnes. And I thought that he just had a wonderful one-on-one sequence against him where he sort of lulled Scotty into thinking that he had an opportunity for 3. And it that sort of felt Mitchell Robinson like, where Mitch used to do that to guards, where guards would get him, you know, in an ISO situation and they'd start trying to sauce him up, and Mitch would sort of drop back a little bit and be like, oh no, I'm gonna play the inside. And then
I've been
cooked. Yeah. Oh no, you got me. And then the guys would go up for the shot and he would just close in and just like get that thing out of there. Well, he sort of did that, but it's made all the more impressive by the fact that like Scotty Barnes, I think, is actually taller and longer than OG Anunoby. And yet, you know, OG still sort of baited him in, like was defending him man-to-man on the perimeter, and then just sort of waited him out and knew exactly how much time he needed with like Barnes's wind up, you know, for his shot and his gather, and just closed right in there, got that big arm up there, and just got like probably 2 fingertips on it, just enough to like completely alter the shot. It almost looked like it was just a horrible air ball for a second. And then, you know, you were like, nah, that was definitely altered. Like there was no way that that's how that actually came out of his hands. But now at this point, like we were talking about it the other day, I mean, the sheer amount of steals and blocks that OG is putting up is just getting crazy at this point. I feel like I know that steals and blocks aren't everything when it comes to defense, obviously. And, you know, now there's the defensive, you know, advanced statistics that people, you know, look at like Rap'em and whatever, like all those different stats and all that. And, you know, various different ways to look at things. And, you know, then there's the opponent guarded field goal percentage and stuff like that, which we reference sometimes, which I'm sure we'll do a deep dive on sooner than later, you know, as we get further on in the season, start trying to look for like season-long trends for these guys. But just if we're looking at potential defensive player of the year case for OG Anunoby when it all comes down to it, I mean, first off, if he keeps playing all these minutes and he doesn't miss time, which like knock on all the wood you can as far as that's concerned, the sheer volume of these numbers is like Wembanyama-ish. but arguably has more impact because he's playing for a team that's winning more. But 3 blocks and 2 steals in this one. That now means that out of his last 5 games, he has had 4 games with 5 stocks or more. And this one being the 5 is the low watermark because he had 6 in his previous 2 games against the Hornets and against Detroit, and then had 7 against the Pelicans. A measly only 2 block, 0 steal game against Orlando in that NBA Cup game. So, I mean, he is just doing some really crazy stuff on the stocks front right now. He's also had 2 other games with 5 or more this season to this point, but they just seem to be stacking up. I mean, I think sooner than later, like once we start getting towards All-Star voting season, and then that starts usually the awards talk in earnest, like I think he's going to be in a real conversation for Defensive Player of the Year at a certain point if he keeps these numbers up, because at a certain point, especially from a Knicks perspective, they're going to get very historic very quickly.
Yeah, he's been inhuman the last few games. What's crazy is like I thought the second one he had like on those back-to-back swats, which gives you an idea of the defensive season someone's having when you can argue like, okay, what was the better crazy 3-pointer block in literally just 2 plays? But like it was Jacoby Walter and the speed which he closed. Like this is a on the nose reference, but it was like a velociraptor. Like I don't know how he made up that space in that amount of time. Like Walter had like 4 feet of separation, totally within his right to shoot it, and he just somehow got there. And it was like it was like the camp counselor like playing basketball with like the 8-year-olds, and maybe I'm speaking from experience as a former sports coach as a day camp, like just like closing it and swatting it because you're literally 2 feet taller than them. But OG isn't. It's just that his arms are somehow that much longer, and he can do the Michael Jordan thing in Space Jam where they're seemingly take up half the court. That was crazy. He had like another like in the fourth quarter, like I turned it in my notes, an alien steal on Walter. Like he's just so good at like cutting his left arm across his body and somehow poking it away. Again, it's just like maybe outside of Dyson Daniels, it's just stuff, and like Kawhi Leonard when he's out there, you just don't really see anyone in the NBA, maybe Herb Jones, who can do what OG can do. Hall of Fame hands. He's incredible. I'll finish up on this. I did not think the defense was very good for the bulk of this game. I think it picked up substantially in the fourth quarter, maybe in part because Scotty Barnes wasn't on the court anymore, but it was a combination of 2 things. The Knicks again concede a ton of threes, and the Raptors shot well on them, 13 of 35. The final number actually wasn't that much. It was mostly through the first 3 quarters, but pretty good shooting percentage for a team that's not always a great shooting team. And 20 fast break points. The Denver Nuggets lead the NBA with 18 fast break points per game, so that's not a good number. It was just a number of different things. Like early on, Toronto got into a pretty good rhythm just because the Knicks, like Hart and Brunson, each had turns like gambling for steals that I think were fine gambles, but it led to wide open corner threes. And then it was kind of what I've been talking about all night, just like over and over again, like what I would consider like pretty dramatic overhelping. Like Campaign, I think, had the worst one where he literally just totally ignored Jacoby Walter in the corner to come over, and it was the easiest pass of Scotty Barnes' life to just hit him there. Continued miscommunication, like, and not even in transition, like mostly in semi-transition, sometimes even off makes. Like Scotty Barnes got a 3 where no one was within 10 feet of him because I think Josh Hart didn't really know where he was supposed to go, but it might have been on Mikal Bridges because Mikal Bridges was the guy who was guarding him the bulk of the time while OG was on RJ until the injury happened. Yeah, it was just like a combination of miscommunication, overhelping, Precious Achiuwa repeatedly just getting torched by Kelly Olynyk, whether it was like giving him open jumpers or just flying by on pump fakes. Like, I don't think he played that well. Like OG and Deuce getting caught on screens and conceding layups. Like it was a few different things, but I think what a lot of this comes back to is like Tom Thibodeau's preferred philosophy right now is I'm just going to protect Karl-Anthony Towns as much as possible. And that's why you see right now the Knicks are 25th in the NBA in threes and made threes allowed per game. And they're 8th in paint points allowed, which is pretty amazing when you consider that Cat has not had a good season protecting the rim. And it's because they're grossly overhelping, but there's just a lot to figure out. The final thing I'll mention is like over and over again, you see Cat contest a shot and then his guy just like gets a layup. Someone else has to crash down, even if it's just to foul that person and put a big on the foul line. Over and over again, you just see opposing bigs getting layups in those situations. So I'm listing a lot of stuff. This is, like you said, probably a full episode for another day, but I just thought there were a myriad of issues. And if not for that, this would have been an Knicks blowout.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will say, just in regard to the 3 thing, I do think that part of Tibbs' philosophy is coming in with a pretty robust scouting report on, like, who to leave open and who not to leave open on any given team, and I think they just kinda took a chance on, in particular, the 2 guys stand out to me that kinda hit them with some ones that hurt were Jacoby Walter and Davion Mitchell, and that's 2 guys that, like, Walter to this point in the season was shooting 20% from 3, and Davion Mitchell was shooting 31% to this point. So, you have those 2 guys go for 5 for 9 against you. All of a sudden, that's 15 points that could have just as easily been 0 points. And I think that was sort of what they were banking on. Obviously, it didn't work out super great. I kind of like I liked in general how they defended RJ. I thought they did pretty well, even though RJ went off. Like, I think RJ's having a good season.
He's been great.
So he's going to just make some difficult shots, and I mean, we saw even with the Knicks, he does that sometimes. But I thought that, like, Grady Dick did not get really going too much, and that's a guy that could have torched them from 3 potentially. I thought they did an okay enough job defending him. Barnes, I think, was kind of going off. So as unfortunate as it is that he got hurt, it definitely helped the Knicks down the stretch of this game to not have him on the floor. But yeah, there's definitely things to work on, and we'll see them work on those. And perhaps we just gave ourselves an idea to do a little, I don't know, 25 game. Are we at 25 games yet? 25 game check-in, something like that on the defense, and start seeing what kind of trends we're seeing, and things they can improve upon. And obviously things to highlight for when Mitchell Robinson gets back that could potentially be alleviated by that. But that's for another day. For now, I think we've talked enough about this one. So thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you soon. And well, we have a preview of the Hawks game coming up tomorrow, so keep your ears out for that. And then obviously we'll have the recap of that, the NBA Cup game, and then some more good stuff to end the week. So till then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.